Thank you to everyone for joining us. We have a news conference we're excited about on pre-hospital transfusion. This is a growing area in emergency medical services, but because obviously it relates to blood itself and the provision of blood on those ambulances, both ground and air ambulances, blood providers are involved as well. So our expert leader on this topic at Impact Life is Dr. Daniela Hermelin, our Chief Medical Officer. She's going to be our first speaker. Our second speaker will be Deputy Chief Adam Hagar with Melville EMS. And I want to underline something. I sent out materials on this, and I've referred to Deputy Chief Hagar as Chief Hagar, which was a promotion essentially that I gave him unintentionally. So if you could please note that his title is Deputy Chief Adam Hagar with Melville EMS. And then we'll also have Amanda Hess, who is our Vice President, Donor Relations and Marketing, who will wrap things up with how we're doing with the blood supply here at the very end as we come up to a holiday weekend. So I think we've got a couple of folks who've just rang the doorbell, so Alex will continue to monitor that, but we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to mute my microphone, and then we'll let Alex pin Dr. Hermelin, and we'll take it away.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Kirby, for that introduction, and welcome everybody. I liked how you prefaced this as we're going into Memorial Day. We talk about this time period known as trauma season, which starts in May, Memorial Day, and ends around Labor Day. So this is really an opportune time that we are discussing this particular topic. And we're going to be speaking about something known as pre-hospital transfusion. And that is a concept of being able to provide EMS, emergency medical services, which can range from individuals that transport in ambulances to helicopters, the ability to have blood available to them at the time when it matters most. So it's having blood available in the pre-hospital, meaning outside of the hospital setting. And again, that refers to offering blood products to our EMS partners so that they can have blood available at the time of when either the traumatic injury occurs or even medical bleeding occurs. And so, of course, this makes sense. We did a recent video, and I brought in the fact that I was speaking to my own 13-year-old son, and he says, "What? This isn't happening?" And so it makes perfect sense that blood should be available to our EMS partners, but it actually isn't a common phenomenon. So when we think about that, it was actually a year ago that our EMS Chiefs Association of August of 2023 endorsed this nationally, that they want to make this into a real effort, that we urgently prioritize that we implement pre-hospital transfusion programs. So we are almost a year from that announcement. And, this really takes a lot of effort. Not only did I mention that it intuitively makes sense, but now we are showing through scientific and medical academic collaborations that this is showing that this actually saves lives. When we can get blood to a bleeding patient quicker, we are extending, saving lives, reducing mortality. And then another benefit is actually reducing the amount of blood products that we need to transfuse at the point when a patient arrives to the hospital. So it is really much a win-win in every way. So what are some of the things that we need to promote this, to push this further? Well, the good news is that our national and really international blood banking organization known as AABB is very close to publishing what we call the standards, which are the guidances to help all of our organizations understand the rules, regulations needed to store, transport, and manage blood products. Because as of now, when we think about blood centers and blood transfusion services, which are the hospitals, have been the gatekeepers of blood. And so now that we are extending that ability, that capability to EMS partners, which is really a different medical subspecialty, we are offering now education in how blood products need to be stored, transported, transfused, and that entire vein-to-vein connection from the collection process to the transfusion recipient. So a lot of information is being brought to our EMS providers so that they are comfortable in the transfusion practice and that we make sure that the blood stays safe for our patients that need it. So I'm very excited that we are very close to these published standards that are going to really solidify this into practice. And again, it's gaining national recognition. Just last week, this was on national news that talked about the importance of getting blood onto the ambulances and helicopters. So we, the Blood Center, Impact Life, are very proud to be partnering with EMS. We think it is a great marriage, so to speak. We love the fact that our EMS partners want to actually learn all of the regulatory elements so that they can be practicing in the safest of ways. And so many of our EMS partners come from military backgrounds, so this in some way is second nature to them. And they are also involved in high-level innovation practices. So not only are we adding this elements, this pre-hospital transfusion practice, but it's coming also with incredible innovation within transfusion medicine in understanding how we should be transfusing either the traumatic patient, the hypovolemic traumatic patient, or even patients in the medical bleeding sense. So I think that we're really actually adding to our transfusion medicine knowledge and also EMS knowledge. So to do this, we, Impact Life, have created what's called a pre-hospital transfusion toolkit. We hope that we can offer our EMS partners a very easy way to implement blood products, and that means offering them the entire education, the ability to implement, and then once they implement, we help them with making sure that all of their processes and their procedures are in place, and also further auditing and things like that. So I think that probably provides you with the great foundation of where we are from the blood center perspective. It is truly been a privilege to work with individuals such as Deputy Chief Hagar and the medical director of Melville, such as Dr. Siegler and our other medical directors in EMS. And I'm happy to now answer any questions that we have, or did we want to save questions towards the end?
I plan on questions at the end if that's all right with folks. I do want to be sensitive to everybody's time. If you do have a question, maybe urgent, you want to jump in quick, write it in the chat. We're monitoring there. But for now, let's go ahead and turn to Deputy Chief Hagar. And thank you, Dr. Hermelin, for that foundation and for the work and the leadership that you're putting into this for Impact Life. Deputy Chief Adam Hagar at Melville EMS, and for folks who aren't familiar with Melville, this is the South County area of St. Louis, so St. Louis region. Here's an individual who has actually experienced pre-hospital transfusion on an emergency call. So I will step aside and ask you to share what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirby, for that introduction, as well as Dr. Hermelin. As he said, I'm Adam Hagar, Deputy Chief with the Melville Fire Protection District in South St. Louis. And we've had a up and running blood program for some time now. And as he mentioned, I've been a part of several pre-hospital blood transfusions, as have a number of my colleagues. One While we've had an operational program for a while, I do want to highlight that we're one of the few ground ambulance agencies in the region who is currently providing pre-hospital transfusion. There's a tremendous amount of interest amongst my colleagues and other agencies related to this practice. I would say, pretty well established at this point, that it is to the patient's benefit to receive a blood transfusion as close to the point of illness or injury as is possible, for the reasons that Dr. Hermelin highlighted. And I want to echo one thing specific to that. One of my mindsets is that anytime you have a chance to give someone some time back, you should try to do that. There's a number of opportunities within EMS to make a difference that affords someone additional time with their family or things of that nature. But the opportunity to reduce hospital length of stay, which is associated with early transfusion for those who are bleeding, the need for additional blood product, which is obviously a precious resource that blood banks and blood distribution centers are always sort of looking for because the need is so great. The opportunity to reduce the need for those blood products and reduce length of hospital stay is directly correlated with pre-hospital transfusion. So in essence, we're able to get people out of the hospital a little bit faster, requiring less intervention, which leads to better outcomes and better recoveries. Pre-hospital transfusion isn't new. The picture that I always show people when we're talking about this is a picture of a Army medic on Omaha Beach on D-Day providing a blood transfusion. Since that time, 80 years ago nearly, the safety profile has improved significantly, access to blood has improved significantly, but the practice isn't new. What's new is carrying blood product on ambulances. Our department is always going to national leaders, international leaders, looking for best practices. And when we learned about blood products being given pre-hospital several years ago, we recognized that this wasn't being done here locally, and it was something that we were going to have to really build a roadmap in order to deliver this to our residents and visitors of the district here in South St. Louis County. We approached the blood distribution points, whether that be hospitals or in this case, agencies like Impact Life. And I do have to just recognize Impact Life because they have been the most forthcoming, willing and capable partner to help guide us along this road, as was referenced by Dr. Hermelin, to make this deliverable to our residents. And I just can't say enough about that. We came into this knowing the outcome we wanted, but needing a tremendous amount of guidance regarding the process. And Dr. Hermelin and the team at Impact Life have been instrumental in allowing us to deliver this. There is a growing body of evidence that, as I said before, suggests that pre-hospital transfusion directly saves lives. And if you think about it, it just makes sense. The standard of care for bleeding patients, for EMS, for as long as EMS has been around, which at this point is in the neighborhood of 50 years, is to replace blood loss with an agent known as normal saline. In layman's terms, it's effectively salt water. It doesn't carry oxygen. It doesn't do all the wonderful things that blood does, but it does sometimes temporize people to allow them to survive to the hospital. In recent years, we've learned that that standard of care might need to change because patients benefit so greatly from the use of blood product. And when we were exploring this, we identified that we would be giving blood product to the gunshot wounds and the people who were stabbed or people who were in car or motorcycle crashes, industrial accidents, construction events, sort of that trauma, that traditional trauma setting. What we've learned is we take care of a ton of people who are bleeding, and not all of them have been involved in a traumatic event. Some of those people have a medical cause of bleeding. For example, they have gastrointestinal bleeding. They have bleeding associated with an obstetrics problem or childbirth. They have bleeding associated with a relatively insignificant event that, because they're on various medications, can take a relatively insignificant event and turn it into a major one. We had a transfusion earlier this year involving a patient who had what is known as a varicose vein, had a ruptured vein on the outer part of their leg. And those can bleed significantly, but they often don't turn into major events. For this particular person, it became a major event. He was critically ill and near death, frankly. He had deteriorated significantly secondary to hemorrhage. And when our staff arrived, we were able to provide him with what I would categorize as life-saving blood product that at this point, in my mind, should be available to every patient who receives ambulance service and is bleeding. I want to just briefly mention one other thing, and that's more or less to my EMS partners. This is doable. Impact Life has been a tremendous partner. They've helped us every single step of the way, and they continue to do that. If you have an open mind and you're willing to challenge the status quo for the benefit of your patients and residents, this is a good idea, and it's something that you should seriously explore.
Deputy Chief Hager, thank you so much. Thank you. I actually kind of have goosebumps sitting here in my office, and it's a bit stuffy here. Appreciate your words. Our next speaker is Amanda Hess, and Amanda is our Vice President, Donor Relations and Marketing, and she will address current status of our region's blood supply, of where we are heading into the holiday weekend, and any additional thoughts. So go ahead, Amanda.
Well, it's hard to follow those two experts. They really have seen it on the front lines and have seen how directly patients are impacted when they're losing blood and we return it to them. There really is nothing else that compares, and there is nothing else available that can truly replace blood when that is what is standing between a person and more time, their life, their future. So we are grateful for volunteer blood donors because that is where the blood comes from. And if it were not for volunteer blood donors, our talented practitioners could not save those lives in those really critical moments. So we appreciate our volunteer blood donors. We rely on about 3,800 blood donations every week to support all of our hospitals and emergency medical services providers throughout the Midwest. During holiday periods, we tend to see a significant drop in donations. We actually see a drop of, more than 20-25%, anticipating next week to actually drop to less than 3,000 donations next week because of the holidays. So it is really important to get the word out about this volunteer activity that you can do. Roll up your sleeve, takes about an hour to donate. I often hear from first-time donors that it was one of the easiest ways they've been able to contribute directly to someone else's life. So we encourage folks to visit us. You can find our donation centers online at bloodcenter.org. You can call us 800-747-5401. And for those that are already donating blood, you can text us at 999-777, and one of our schedulers will help you out and find a convenient location. We are a 24/7 operation in blood banking because we know that that blood needs to be there for patients and needs to be there for Deputy Chief Hagar and his colleagues and all of those that work in our emergency rooms at our hospitals. This is trauma season. May certainly kicks that off for us. And we can continue to see those needs and anticipate continuing to see those needs throughout the summer.
All right. Amanda, thank you. Well done. And I'm sure we have some folks with questions for any of our speakers in the group. And so I think, just go ahead and open up your mic and we'll see if we can take those. If we need to kind of sort out who's going to go first, we will, but let's open the floor to questions.
Okay, I have questions, I guess, sort of clarifications. As far as are we talking about whole blood products that are on these ambulances, or is it byproducts? And just want to clarify that. And then also what sort of risks there are with whole blood transfusions, and what kind of equipment that this requires on the ambulance in order to be able to do this.
I can speak to the operational aspect, and then if Dr. Hermelin would speak to the risks, I would appreciate it. So regarding the equipment that's required for this, blood is temperature sensitive to extend its shelf life. It is required to be refrigerated, refrigerated and or cooled. Our agency uses a certified FDA-approved blood-specific mobile refrigerator that is hardwired into our deputy chief's vehicle. The deputy chiefs respond on those higher acuity incidents where specialized equipment might be needed. We also use a warming device that is specific for the use of blood product. That device warms blood from a refrigerated temperature between around 4 or so degrees Celsius, typically 40 degrees thereabout Fahrenheit, to a physiologic temperature around the body temperature in about 10 seconds as it passes through the warmer. That allows us to deliver the blood quickly. Currently, we are here at Melville, we are carrying packed red blood cells as well as liquid plasma. So we use component therapy, and we deliver those in a 1-to-1 ratio for patients that require blood. That practice is consistent with the majority of the trauma centers in the region. There just isn't enough access for whole blood just yet, which is why the message that Amanda gave is so important. Yeah.
Deputy Chief Hagar, I'm sorry, I'll jump in. Could you please also address the blood type?
Yeah.
The blood cells.
Yeah, we the packed red cells, we use type O blood, specifically O positive blood. Dr. Hermelin can speak to that.
I guess I'll take the hard part of the question. That was the question about adverse risks of transfusion. And I will start with the basic premise that the transfusion and the testing of blood has been the safest it's ever been. So as you all know, with each donation, we ask a series of questions to our donors, and we also perform infectious disease testing at each donation. So that covers that aspect. So from the infectious disease profile, our blood has never been safer. But then we talk about other types of adverse events that are transfusion reactions. And when I narrow this down within the trauma setting, it would be transfusing blood very quickly. And when we transfuse things very quickly, especially things that are cold, it can cause hypothermia. However, as Deputy Chief mentioned, they use blood warmers when they transfuse products. There are other transfusion reactions that can occur. These are transfusion reactions that we teach and educate our medical directors to understand, who then also will teach that to their EMS team, but they are very, very rare. However, we do teach them what they are and what they can look like. But we find that, transfusing blood in the emergency setting is going to be very outweigh the risks of course, any type of adverse event that we would probably see. So I will now touch upon a little bit of what we were describing in the type of blood products. So Michelle, you are very astute. You asked about whole blood. Whole blood is considered now one of the standard of care of transfusion practice in traumatic resuscitation. It makes sense. A person is bleeding whole blood. Let's give them back whole blood. What does that mean? Well, it's the whole thing, whole blood. It's got red cells, platelets, plasma, all in one bag. So whole blood is something, though, that is a commodity. And at Impact Life, it's something that we make that's made to order. It's a special product. And when I say that, that's because we have to select donors that have what's called low titer O whole blood. So they are O donors, which is, something that we have to find, and that they are low titer, which means they have low antibodies in their blood as a qualification. So that makes it harder to find these donors. We have to broaden the donor pool. And it does require us logistically, that I'm not going to go into too much unless you want to make another time, but there are operational elements that are involved that require us to get the blood back to the center within 8 hours so that it can do this and this and this. So that makes it logistically challenging. So to do that, we really have to, again, broaden our O donor pool and really be recruiting more O donors to be able to meet the demands of having O low titer whole blood for the pre-hospital setting. So at this point of time, we are offering component therapy. That would be packed red cells. That would be liquid plasma as opposed to frozen plasma. Frozen plasma will require time to thaw, but we offer a liquid plasma. It's already in its liquid state so that our partners can transfuse it right away. So those are the components that we offer at this time. And as Kirby mentioned, we are offering O-RHD positive packed red cells at this point of time.
All right. Other questions?
Maybe I could just add a little bit to the blood type as it relates to volunteer donors. If you are a type O, O positive or O negative, you've probably received a call from a blood center to donate, and there's good reason. And it's related to this topic because O negative red blood cells are the universal red cell product type for transfusions, meaning that that red blood cell is compatible with all of the other types. So it creates a situation where in an emergency that can be transfused quickly if there is less time to cross type the patient. And so O negative is often used in emergency situations in our hospitals as well. And O positive, alternatively, can be provided to A positive, B positive, AB positive, and of course O positive. So all of the types that are Rh positive. So it is also an alternative to that universal product that is often relied upon when moments matter. So if you are a type O blood donor, this is one of the reasons why you may receive more phone calls because you are needed constantly. We do see that less than half the population actually has type O, but because of the fact that other types can receive type O blood, a much greater percent is needed for our patients. So thank you for those that do donate, and if you haven't tried it yet, now is a great time.
All right, still open for more questions if we have other follow-up. I do want to make note that we're recording all of this, and I will post back on the page of on our news section of our website with information about the news conference. And so if you need to go back and look at anything, we'll have a video there as well. But again, any additional questions, we'll be happy to take those. I'll ask Amanda. Sorry,
hey, Michelle, looks like you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry. So I know cost is a big issue. I guess this is currently not reimbursed by insurance. So like, how is this being paid for? Will patients end up footing the bill for this? So that's a big question. And then also I was wondering, like, so I see that it's only a handful of Missouri EMS ground crews that are providing this right now. I don't know if other states that you're partner with have state, barriers or logistics that are preventing them from participating or not. So yeah, so those two big questions.
If you don't mind, I'll just answer the last part of the question, which is we currently have 18 bases that we supply blood, and that covers our region. So that's including Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri. So we are spread out. I'm going to let Deputy Chief answer the first part of your question because the answer is it will depend. Every state will have different regulations regarding how they are able to perform practice and scope of care. But to your first question about how this is being paid for is an excellent one, and now I'll allow Deputy Chief to answer.
Kind of a complicated question, believe it or not. With regards to the reimbursement side of it, I'll speak for our agency. Our fire chief, Brian Hendricks, and our elected board of directors, they chose to fund this from our general fund, from our general operating budget. That those funds are provided by taxpayers. They believe that the costs associated with the program, when they quantify the cost of it with the associated benefit for our district residents and visitors, they elected to fund it from our general fund. I'm grateful that they did that because I really do think that it's worthwhile. As far as reimbursement goes, it's a new conversation. It's kind of a complex question related to how ambulance services are reimbursed. Ambulance services are reimbursed for the purpose of transport rather than through an itemized mechanism. And so if a paramedic provides paramedic level services and transport to the hospital, that is reimbursed at a flat rate. The only variable part of it is the number of miles that the patient is transported. So there's no specific reimbursement for blood product. I am a part of I would describe it as an early initiative to try to address this at a variety of levels in order to make reimbursement less of a burden for ambulance agencies, because as you referenced, it is rather expensive relative to the other things that we do after you're able to overcome the supply issues and everything else. I do want to touch on just one other aspect of your question. Here in the St. Louis region, there is a tremendous amount of interest from agencies related to this. I think the biggest barrier to implementation is just the time frame that we're in. It's a relatively new process regionally, and each individual agency, there are dozens of them in our area, needs to decide for themselves whether or not they are able to bring this to the residents and whether or not blood transfusion is a good fit for them individually. Our fire district is the largest in St. Louis County. We're able to support our program as a standalone entity. But I know there's some discussion about a regional approach to the availability of blood product for some of the smaller agencies. And I would expect moving forward, at least speaking for our region, that you'll see this with increasing frequency throughout certainly the areas surrounding St. Louis on the Missouri side. I can't speak specifically about the regulatory hurdles for Illinois or any of the other states, but in Missouri, there really aren't any regulatory barriers, external regulatory barriers to implementation. The processes are controlled by the individual EMS agencies, and then there's obviously the issue of the costs and associated reimbursement.
Two pieces I'll mention briefly. The Cole County EMS, also in Missouri, Jefferson City area, is holding a blood drive with Impact Life today. So we thank them for that support. And they're also one of our partners on pre-hospital transfusion. I see that Colin Shop is among the reporters in the news conference. I want to mention for Colin, who is based in Peoria and heard on national or public radio in central Illinois, that in your area, we work with OSF Life Flight out of the Bloomington base or at the Central Illinois Regional Airport. I had a chance to visit there late last summer and see their base and see how they're doing things at that site. Just so since you're on, I thought I would mention that specifically for you. Other questions from our media? Any last thoughts or points to discuss?
And we do have a list of our EMS providers that we currently provide blood products and services to on our website at bloodcenter.org. So you can find it there as well, where we have our hospitals listed. Air Evac Life Team is also has a pretty big presence in Illinois and even into Indiana. So it is growing, and we're so grateful for Melville and for the other providers that are willing to step up and try this new way of being able to save lives more immediately. And I say new, but really in this setting is where it's new outside of the military. So appreciate everything that folks have done to partner and collaborate on this effort.
Deputy Chief Hager, can you say how much was budgeted for this program?
I'd want to follow up with you after the fact just to make sure that I give you an accurate number, but I believe I have your contact information and I can include Kirby on that email so it can be distributed.
Thanks.
Thank you. I want to note too, for those on, but before we would end the meeting, you might want to look into the meeting chat where Deputy Chief Hagar has left his email address as well as the name and contact for his public information office, Bern Anacito, as well. So that might be handy to have for follow up on this story or at some point in the future. We are at that holiday weekend, as we mentioned. The Blood Center always has donor promotions. We are currently, folks who schedule with us and present to donate at our donor centers will receive a voucher they can redeem for either a $20 gift card, bonus points to use in our loyalty store, where we've got a great red, white, and blue tie-dyed t-shirt right now, or a donation to a nonprofit, again, the donor's choice. So we always have those thank yous. I would be remiss not to mention, earlier, Amanda covered how to schedule at bloodcenter.org or by calling us at 800-747-5401. Donation centers across our whole region will be open on Memorial Day because the need for donations, we just really need to maintain operations on the Monday. And we know there'll be folks who are able based on their time and their day off. And so I dropped that in as well. But there's a lot of information we've shared, and I'm so grateful to everyone for your time. Any last words? You all know how to reach me if there's something else you need. All right. We'll post the recording and share with those who've asked specifically for it, or if you want to just drop me an email to be sure that you'll get that. We will process that recording and I'll get it to you as soon as I possibly can. It'll come through an email from wetransfer.com. Keep an eye for that if you request it, and it may go to your clutter if your email filter directs it that way. So be sure to check there too. I wouldn't want you to miss it. All right. Well, thank you to all three of our speakers, and special thanks to our outside speaker, Deputy Chief Adam Hagar, and the great work you're doing in the field to help patients. So thanks so much. Take care.